Shalom, and welcome back to Bnei Noach Academy. Thoughts on life. Please remember to hit the like button, to subscribe, and most importantly, to share this insight and inspiration with friends and family. So, the question is, do Jews like war? The answer to the question is no. That's the short answer. But let's explain. Let's understand. Let's understand the fundamentals of what it means to be Jewish, which obviously means to follow the Torah, and historically see how Jews fought war. So first and foremost, the real question is, why do we always find it, especially throughout the Tanakh, the Bible, and in recent history, if you look at all the wars that were not initiated by Israel, rather were thrust upon us, that is, the state of Israel, that we won. And the question is, why? Obviously, this is by the grace of God. It's not only due, or maybe not at all due, to the fact that we had, such a good army and so well trained and, the best equipment, because in fact, that wasn't the case all the time. And certainly as we saw in recent events, we were caught off guard. So it's not like we were well trained, well prepared, and so on. In fact, the fact that we were caught off guard is actually proof and an indication of the fact that we do not like war. We actually do not want to fight any wars. It's not in the real Jewish, so to speak, DNA, in our lexicon even, to fight wars. That's not saying that we are afraid of war. That's not saying that we shy away from defending ourselves, as we see clearly, especially nowadays. But the idea of war in and itself is not a positive thing. Anytime there is war, it is negative for everyone. And as we know, there's always collateral damage. There are always the innocents that lose their lives. And even think about it, even the soldiers, the actual combatants, when they lose their lives, not only is it bad for them, for those who lost their lives, but then there's the innocents, their families back home, who are now grieving for them and certainly have to cope with the loss. So when we look into what Jews and Judaism feel about war, the bottom line and the simplest answer is Jews do not want war. They do not like war. Jews and Judaism celebrate and anticipate and hold holy and sacred life. Life and war are antithetical because war brings about death. Just to give you an example, when the Jews were commanded to build the first tabernacle, that means the first temple, which was in the form of a tabernacle, a mobile temple. This is in the book of Exodus. They were told, do not lift any iron over my altar, because if you do so, you have desecrated it. Why? With the iron, you can shape it and make beautiful square stones in order to have a beautifully perfect altar. Why would God forbid us from having any whatsoever iron or metals touching the stones of the altar? Well, the answer is, as the sages tell us in the Talmud, what's behind this? That, quote, the altar was created. It is designed to lengthen the years of man. This is designed in order to bring an atonement for man, and iron inherently is there to shorten the years of man. Of course, you also have iron that serves a very positive purpose. You have a knife in your kitchen and so on. But primarily, iron kills. They use it in bullets, they use it in knives, they use it in all kinds of armaments. And therefore, God did not want to have the two mix. And then when we look, for example, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 20, verse 10, God gives us clear instructions as when you come to a city and you're about to attack it. First, you have to, quote, call out to it on peace. Call out to it for peace. And see if the people will be agreeable to put their arms down. If the people will be agreeable to the conditions of surrender and not have to have any bloodshed at all. No, our might and our pride is not in how many of the enemy we killed, but rather how many of the enemy we spared. We did not kill. How many enemy we were not forced to kill. To put it in the words of a modern Jewish leader, Golda Meir, she was asked various questions once, interviewed about this struggle between the Israelis and the so-called Palestinians. And one of the things she said was, you know, at some point I can find it in my heart, I believe, to forgive them for the blood of our young men that was spilled. However, I can never, ever find it in my heart to forgive them for forcing us to spill the blood of their young men. You see, a Jew, regardless if religious or secular, in our DNA, in our blood flow, it is so that we just don't want to kill. It's not something we want to do. However, if we have to do it, then of course we do it. And this brings us to Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 19, where God tells us that when it comes to Amalek, which embodies, it represents the epitome of bad, the epitome of evil, because they only came to kill and to maim. They had no expectation of winning over the Jews. Their whole intention was to hurt, to cause damage, to cause pain, and to kill as many as possible. Sounds familiar? Sounds like something we just experienced not too long ago? God says, Timche et zecher Amalek. You have to eradicate even the memory of Amalek. As good as you are. But if you're really good, then you need to know how to eradicate the bad. We're not about killing. We're about life. We're about the sanctity of life. But because you're about the sanctity of life, you have to eliminate anything that threatens the sanctity of life. And then finally, if you look in the book of Samuel 2, chapter 8, verse 13, what is the epitome of a Jew? It says, and King David made a name. He got fame. He, meaning he and the Jewish people. He as the leader of the Jewish people. What was the fame that he got, quote, in returning from the war of smiting Aram? Well, sages tell us that this is the great act that King David did, which actually is not a precedent. It was already precedented by the very first Jew, Abraham. And that is that he had all his soldiers, all his men, bury the enemy's dead. Yes, to show dignity and sanctity for another human being, even if that human being was once standing against you and your enemy. This is how a Jew behaves. This is how a Torah follower behaves, Jew and non-Jew. But people who do not follow the Torah, unfortunately, not only would they kill viciously and consider it to be an act, a virtue, I should say, an act to be proud of, and maybe call home and call your parents and tell how many people, how many Jews you killed. But moreover, they even could mistreat even a dead corpse. They could even defile that little element of sanctity that almost no human being can, God forbid, stoop to. That lack of sanctity that is even once a person is dead, to actually treat them with disrespect. That's not what. So the answer in short is no, Jews do not like war, but that's why they win wars.